Yo, this is Richie Mack, the Travel OG. I want to give a special shout out to Dante from Dontaesboxingnation, letting me put y'all up on game here in Thailand. Check this out.
What up, y'all? It's your boy Sheik Luch, LOXD Block. Listen, I need to shout out my homie Richie Mack, man, out there in Thailand. Yo, the bikini babes of the week. Richie Mack, you the Travel OG, King.
Sheik Luch tapping in. We got to get the lots for the golf tournament we having in Thailand, Pattaya City to be exact.
Dontaesboxingnation, Dante's Cooking Nation. We are out here. Where are we at?
We're out here in Bangkok.
There you go. She's from Ireland. Matter of fact, introduce yourself to the world.
My name's Hannah and I'm from Ireland and I'm the biggest fan of cooking show.
You hear that?
Yeah.
Biggest fan?
And I'm from Ireland. Sorry.
No, I can edit it. Don't worry about it. All the way in Bangkok, Thailand, y'all.
No,
I'm gonna get
in
it right.
Ireland as well.
In Ireland, you hear that? DBN is international,
My
guys.
churros are ready now.
Dontaesboxingnation, what's going on, guys? Well, this is how it begins, guys. This is how it begins. You ever been in a situation where maybe you were at work, maybe you were in school, and everyone around you was thinking the same thing, but no one had the balls to just come out and say it. And then it just took one person to finally come out and say it, and then everyone else, they start saying, man, I was thinking the exact same thing. Now everyone is comfortable to speak on the situation, right? That's exactly what's going on right now with Canelo Alvarez. Everyone had seen what Canelo Alvarez was doing, but people were afraid to say something about it because they knew the backlash they get from these racists on the internet. And maybe even old media trying to defend Canelo Alvarez no matter what he does. Old media has been praying that no one goes off code and starts to tell the truth about what Canelo Alvarez is really doing in boxing. But guess what? Unfortunately for you, your prayers did not pay off, because boxers are starting to expose Canelo Alvarez one by one. Boxers and boxing experts. From Teddy Atlas and now Juan Marquez. Juan Marquez, just like Teddy Atlas, he did not hold any punches when going in on Canelo Alvarez, stating there's no way Canelo Alvarez can be the best. He's not even the best Mexican fighter when it comes to the greats. Juan Marquez doesn't even have Canelo in the top 3 when it comes to the greatest Mexican fighters. Juan Marquez, he did a Spanish interview that did 1 million views just because he was exposing Canelo Alvarez, right? Let me go ahead and quote exactly what he said about Canelo. He said, the history of Mexican boxing is very rich. It has a lot. You cannot say that Canelo can be the best in all history when we have seen the best. Julio Cesar Chavez, for example. There are many fighters who won the world championships, as I did, and as several did, fighting against the best without putting in rehydration clauses to the opponents, without depleting them and saying, you have to do this. Economically, it was very good. But as I already mentioned, for example, rehydration clauses where if you gain or regain so many pounds, you will have a fine. I think that it is not fair to the other fighter. All things have to be equal. Canelo is not the best boxer in the history of Mexico. In fact, he's not even in the top 3, because those spots are occupied by fighters like Julio Cesar Chavez, number 1, Salvador Sanchez, and third place is shared between Ricardo Lopez and Humberto Gonzalez. End quote. Let me start by saying this, there's no doubt about it. Boy, this is about to piss the racist Mexican fans off. At least the Mexican fans that live in America. I've already distinguished the two, guys. I've already told you. When it comes to Mexican fans in Mexico, at least from what I witnessed when I was out there covering boxing events and watching live fights, the majority of those Mexican fans are actual real boxing fans. They even applaud when black fighters are actually fighting there, right? Something you will never see in America. Whenever a black fighter is fighting, he will always be booed by Mexicans in America. That is a given. Hell, I remember one time I was watching a fight, and we were watching a small fight in Las Vegas, and 50 Cent was there. 50 Cent was there, and he got up and started walking, and all the girls start, cheering, hooting, and hollering, trying to get close to 50 Cent. And a lot of these girls were not black. All of a sudden, I hear a group of boos, right? I hear some boos. They're booing because some Mexican girls and Filipino girls. And it was a sprinkle of like black and white girls, but it was mainly Mexican girls. They were all over 50 Cent like a cheap suit. And I looked to see where the boos are coming from, and it was like a group of like 6 Mexican guys that were sitting down. They all chuckling and booing and stuff like that at the same time. So they let you know that it has nothing to do with boxing. If you're over here booing 50 Cent, yeah, it has nothing to do with boxing. We know what time it is. Matter of fact, come to think of it, Ray J was there too that night, and the girls were on him, and then the same thing happened. These same guys and a couple other guys in the crowd, they started to boo Ray J. So like I said, this is going to really piss off the racist Mexican fans because they feel it doesn't matter if you're telling the truth, Juan. You are supposed to be loyal to your race and stay on code. When they start saying that Juan Marquez is jealous and he's a hater, what they're saying is you are a sellout for snitching on your own people. They never debate, they never try to refute anything that Marquez says. They just say, stop snitching on him. You're a hater. You're jealous, etc., etc. Jealous of what? Jealous because Canelo Alvarez is fighting nothing but C-level European/white fighters? When fighters like Juan Manuel Marquez, Salvador Sanchez, Julio Cesar Chavez, they were fighting the best in the whole wide world when it comes to boxing? Jealous of that? Or are they jealous because Canelo was so rich? Being rich has nothing to do with being the best in the sport of boxing. De La Hoya was rich. I didn't hear all these Mexican fighters criticizing De La Hoya. Do you guys know that almost every great Mexican fighter has criticized Canelo Alvarez, from Eric Morales? Eric Morales said he keeps fighting these weak fighters that are past their prime, etc., etc. This is what Eric Morales said. Julio Cesar Chavez said almost the same thing. And this is not the first time that Juan Marquez has criticized Canelo Alvarez. He did it about 5 years ago, and that says a lot if you think about it. The fact that Juan, he talked about how Canelo was cherry picking and fighting these soft touches. He said this like 5 years ago. And then you fast forward to present day, and he's still criticizing Canelo Alvarez, which means things have not changed that much. Sure, Canelo fights a good fighter every once in a blue moon, but he's consistently handpicking weak opponents. About 4 or 5 years ago, Juan Marquez, he really criticized Canelo Alvarez for cherry picking his opponents. And do you know Canelo got so angry, he was so mad at Marquez for exposing him, he challenged Marquez to a fight. I'm not making this up. Canelo at 154 was challenging Juan Manuel Marquez to a fight. But meanwhile, Demetrius Andrade says this about Canelo at 154 when Andrade was the champion and Canelo was Andrade's mandatory. This is what Andrade said to Canelo.
Canelo, you a bitch. I'm putting it out there. No, I don't like to disrespect men that step into the ring, but damn, you fighting Kirtland that hasn't been in the ring since Glenn Tapia, when you have an opportunity to fight Demetrius Andrade for the WBO. Damn, I thought in the sport of boxing, people want to be a champion, to have that title. I understand you got De La Hoya, you got the promotion team, you got the money, you got the contract, you got the country, you got the country behind you, the fan base. But damn, you scared of getting into a fight. I thought you was the man. If I knew some Espanol, I'd hit you up with that too, but damn. Come on, man, stop playing.
So the champion completely calls the mandatory out of his name, daring him to take his title from him. And Canelo, he rejects the proposal, but then he challenges Juan Manuel Marquez to a fight because of what he said about Canelo, we know what time it is. But let's go back to what Juan Manuel Marquez said. Guys, if you look at some of the greatest Mexican fighters that Juan Manuel Marquez mentioned, and he was being very humble because he didn't put himself on that list. If you think about it, all those fighters that Juan Manuel Marquez mentioned, they all have at least one win on their record that is way more impressive of a win than any win than Canelo has ever gotten in his professional boxing career. And that is a fact. Marquez, for example, he knocked out Manny Pacquiao. It's hard to kind of top that, right? He knocked out Manny Pacquiao, beat him with no controversy, right? Salvador Sanchez, he actually knocked out the great Azuma Nelson. And Julio Cesar Chavez, I would say his biggest win was against Meldrick Taylor, because Meldrick Taylor was a gold medalist. He was undefeated. And Chavez, I know it was with a little bit of controversy with the stoppage, but I'm going to still say, because he got the knockout, that was more impressive than any win that Canelo Alvarez has ever gotten before. If you don't believe me, then I'll go ahead and ask you the question. If I ask you right now, what is Canelo Alvarez's most impressive win of his career? You can't say the Golovkin fights because both of those fights ended in controversy. It can be argued that Golovkin won both of those fights.
Because at the end of the day, they're brilliantly picking opponents that can't win. They can't win. First of all, they're not going to get a decision. But forget about that part. You think you're going to get a decision over the golden boy in boxing that lays golden eggs?
If you think that, go watch the first Triple G fight. I don't care which fighter you like. There's no way that you don't think Triple G won that fight.
100%.
And you know what's funny?
I thought he won the second one too.
So like I said, clearly the Golovkin fights was not Canelo's best performance. Clearly the Floyd Mayweather fight wasn't his best performance because he lost. Clearly, the Lara fight wasn't his best performance because many people feel he lost that fight as well. So what is Canelo's best performance when it comes to winning a fight? Is it Amir Khan? Is it Yildirim? Is it Plant? Is it Billy Joe Saunders? None of the opponents that Canelo Alvarez has beat in terms of impressive wins can match the wins that fighters like Juan Manuel Marquez got. That is a fact. That is not even up for debate. Undisputed only means something when you're going up against the best competition. When you're just fishing for the weakest opponents that just happen to have a belt at that time, it means nothing when you're undisputed. I mean, let's be honest right now. Whose win is more impressive? Sugar Ray Leonard knocking out Tommy Hearns, or Canelo Alvarez beating Plant, Smith, Yildirim, and Billy Joe Saunders? Of course, it would be Sugar Ray Leonard's one win over Canelo's 4 wins. It's called quality over quantity, guys. Floyd Mayweather's win against Canelo himself, an old man, 15 pounds smaller than Canelo. And Canelo at the time was a unified champion. That win alone was more impressive than all 4 wins that Canelo got at 168. Floyd Mayweather's win against Diego Corrales, Gennaro Hernandez, hell, Angel Manfredi, Ricky Hatton. Did you know that Ricky Hatton was considered number 4 pound for pound the best fighter in the world when Floyd Mayweather knocked him out? You know why Ricky Hatton was ranked so high? Because Ricky Hatton had just beat pound for pound number 3 Costa Tszyu. When Floyd Mayweather fought Shane Mosley was considered pound for pound, top 5, one of the best in the world. He was considered the number 1 welterweight in the world. So it's equivalent to Terrence Crawford fighting against Errol Spence. When Canelo fought Shane Mosley, it was on the undercard of a Mayweather fight. And it was an old past his prime Shane. Shane wasn't even ranked in the top 10 anymore, coming off of a loss when he fought against Canelo Alvarez. Now, since once again, you fans always make the mistake of trying to compare Canelo Alvarez to the best fighter of this generation and arguably the greatest fighter of all time, statistically, I'm going to go ahead and put my link in the description box so you guys can go back and watch my classic video where I did a complete side-by-side breakdown of Canelo versus Floyd Mayweather's career. But see, I don't do it like you guys do it, where you try to compare what Floyd did at age 40 to what Canelo is doing at age 30. No, what I did is I compared them to what they were both doing at the exact same age of their career. It's a very long video and it's completely broken down. So check it out if you missed it. In fact, I just may go ahead and add the video link to this video at the end of it so you can just click on it when this video is over with. But you know, the funny thing is, have you guys ever noticed that whenever people are trashing Floyd Mayweather in the comment section or they're having a conversation, do you guys notice none of these Canelo Alvarez fans ever say to them, hey man, what you clowning Floyd Mayweather for? He just did the same things that Canelo is doing right now, and we're praising Canelo, right? They never say that, right? But as soon as we start exposing Canelo, that's the first thing they want to do is compare this man to Floyd Mayweather, when Canelo will never be close to Floyd Mayweather in terms of success. Matter of fact, speaking of him not even being close, have you guys also noticed the majority of Mexican fighters and trainers, they have actually praised Floyd Mayweather as the greatest fighter of all time? Have you guys noticed that? I remember Mikey Garcia. When Mikey Garcia, when he was still with Top Rank and Bob Arum, Mikey said that Floyd Mayweather was his favorite fighter, and Mikey's father and trainer, he said that Floyd Mayweather is the greatest fighter of all time. Juan Marquez's trainer, the same person that's saying that Canelo will never be the best, isn't even in the top 3 or 4 when it comes to the greatest Mexican fighters. His own trainer said that Floyd Mayweather is simply the best. He is the Michael Jordan of boxing. Oscar De La Hoya, he said it years ago, right after Floyd Mayweather beat Shane Mosley. He said that Floyd Mayweather is the greatest fighter of all time. And he just said it again recently. The same thing. After he praised Manny Pacquiao for retiring, right after that, he said, he was asked the question, by the way, who's the best? And he said Floyd Mayweather, hands down. And he doesn't even like Floyd Mayweather. So if Canelo is doing all of the same things that Floyd Mayweather did, how come none of these guys are saying he's the greatest of all time? They won't even say he's the greatest Mexican fighter of all time. You know why they're not saying it? Because they're not going to sit over here and lie to the public just to make a bunch of racist fans feel good. This is not 1908, where the majority of fighters were white, right? White and black. And a lot of the white fighters refused to even fight the black guys, right? This is not 1908, guys. Can you name me one great fighter in more recent years that had opportunities to fight the best black fighters, the best Mexican fighters, and he decided, I'm going to only fight these white fighters so I can get their belts and say, look how many belts I've won? Sugar Ray Leonard didn't do it. Floyd Mayweather didn't do it. Ali, James Toney, Roy Jones, Pernell Whitaker, Julio Cesar Chavez, Salvador Sanchez, Juan Marquez, Oscar De La Hoya. None of these fighters did this. Only Canelo Alvarez is doing it. You know, these Canelo fans, they like to say stuff like, hey, what are you talking about, man? Canelo, he fought Floyd Mayweather. He fought Shane Mosley. He fought Danny Jacobs. If you're not fighting against the most dangerous black fighter, it doesn't matter if you're just fighting black fighters. Imagine if Floyd Mayweather, with all the Mexicans he fought, can you guys imagine if he would only fight the Mexican fighter that already had a loss, had been knocked out before, but there were 2 dangerous, undefeated Mexicans that had been calling Floyd out for 6 years, and he's still refusing to fight him. Floyd is vacating his belts just to avoid them because they're his mandatory. And he's sitting over here talking about they're horrible fighters. They just want a payday. And imagine Floyd moving up to a weak division Instead of staying in the stacked division where the biggest fights are available, he moves up to the weakest division and fights a bunch of white, C-level European fighters just to become undisputed. So he avoids Canelo Alvarez and all the other very tough undefeated Mexican fighters, but he's undisputed though. Mexican fans, be honest right now. Would you be parading right now saying, yeah, man, Floyd Mayweather is the best. He's the best of this era. He's undisputed, and people are just hating on him. They're just a bunch of haters. Would you guys be saying that? Hell no, y'all wouldn't be saying that. We know what time it is. With that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this video up. That's all I got for now, guys. On to the next one. All right, now check this out, guys. If you're looking to repair eczema scars, burns and bruises, dark spots and blemishes, then this right here is the perfect product for you guys. It's called LO Decay Face and Body Oil. Athletes and top-ranking boxers, they're also using it after training to reduce swelling, inflammation, and to ease the pain. So get yours today. Go to lodecay.com, like them on Facebook, and follow them on Instagram.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is the big day. SMPs at ScalpCarolinas. I need a real restoration. This is my makeover right here.
Fellas, I've got some great news for you. If you've lost your hair or have a receding hairline, the time has come when you can finally get your hairline back through a process called scalp micropigmentation. So here's how it works. It's a hair tattoo that replicates the look of your hair follicles when you have fully shaved it down. So to get this hookup, make sure you follow and contact my man ScalpCarolinas on Instagram.